The battlefield of Kurukshetra was soaked in blood, and the air was heavy with the cries of warriors locked in mortal combat. The war had raged for 15 days, and both sides had suffered immense losses. Among the many battles fought that day, one stood out in its sheer intensity. The moment when Bhima, the mighty Pandava, finally faced Dushasana, the man who had once humiliated Draupadi. For years, Bhima had carried the weight of an unfulfilled vow, and now, as he stood before his hated enemy, the moment of reckoning had arrived. Bhima, the second Pandava, was known for his immense strength and fiery temperament. He had never forgotten the humiliation Draupadi had suffered in Hastinapura's court, where Dushasana had dragged her by the hair and attempted to disrobe her in front of the assembled Kuru elders. That day, Bhima had sworn to tear open Dushasana's chest and drink his blood, a vow that had burned within him like an unquenched fire. Now, as he saw Dushasana wielding his mace on the battlefield, that fire blazed brighter than ever. Dushasana, the younger brother of Duryodhana, was a fierce warrior in his own right. Arrogant and cruel, he had always reveled in his brother's schemes, and had played a major role in the mistreatment of the Pandavas. But despite his skills, he was no match for the sheer ferocity of Bhima. As their duel began, the earth seemed to tremble beneath the force of their blows. Maces clashed, sending sparks flying, and the ground cracked beneath their feet. Dushasana fought with all his might, but Bhima, driven by years of pent-up rage, was unstoppable. With a sudden, crushing strike, Bhima's mace shattered Dushasana's weapon, leaving him defenseless. In the blink of an eye, Bhima seized his enemy by the hair, the same way Dushasana had once seized Draupadi, and threw him to the ground. There was no mercy in his eyes, only the grim determination of a man fulfilling a sacred vow. He rained blow after blow upon Dushasana's body, breaking his ribs, crushing his limbs, and making him gasp in agony. The battlefield, once filled with the clamor of war, grew eerily silent, as warriors from both sides watched the brutal spectacle unfold. But Bhima was not done. Overcome with a savage fury, he tore open Dushasana's chest with his bare hands, his fingers digging into flesh and bone. Blood gushed forth, staining the battlefield crimson. The very warriors who had faced countless horrors of war stood frozen in shock at the sight. Bhima, with the thirst of a vengeful beast, lifted the blood to his lips and drank, his face twisted in grim satisfaction. The oath he had sworn in Hastinapura's court had now been fulfilled in the most gruesome way imaginable. From a distance, Duryodhana watched, his heart gripped with terror and grief. His most loyal brother, the one who had always stood by him, lay lifeless in a pool of blood. The mighty Kaurava prince, who had once laughed at Draupadi's humiliation, now found himself consumed by despair. The war, which had already taken so much from him, had now claimed another piece of his soul. Even the most hardened warriors among the Kauravas shuddered, realizing that the wrath of the Pandavas was far from over. As Bhima stood over Dushasana's lifeless body, his rage finally began to subside. The echoes of his vow no longer tormented him, for justice had been served. But the war was not yet over, and there were still debts to be paid. Ahead lay the final confrontation with Duryodhana, the man who had orchestrated the Pandavas' suffering. But for now, Bhima had avenged Draupadi's honor, and as the sun set on Kurukshetra, the earth bore witness to the fulfillment of a terrible oath. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mythology Medley. Click the bell icon for more such amazing mythological content.